Welcome back to Talk Tensors, where we like to really dig into the latest machine learning research.
That's right.
And today we have a fascinating paper
Yeah.
all about computational chemistry.
It's a good one.
It's called Efficient Transition State Searches by Freezing String Method with Graph Neural Network Potentials
Catchy title.
by Jonah Marks and Joseph Gomes from the University of Iowa.
That's right.
So this paper is really interesting. It's
Yeah.
showing how machine learning is really
It's really coming into its own.
changing the game in all sorts of scientific fields.
Absolutely. And what these researchers have done
Yeah.
is they've managed to speed up this process of finding transition states
Okay.
in chemical reactions by almost 50%.
Wow. That's amazing.
Using this really clever combination
Yeah.
of the freezing string method and graph neural networks.
Okay, so before we get into all the details,
Right.
I think it's helpful to take a step back and make sure everyone listening
Yeah.
is on the same page. We've mentioned transition states a couple times now.
We have.
Can you remind us why they're so important in chemistry?
So think about a chemical reaction, like a journey,
Okay.
from one valley to another over a mountain range.
Okay.
The reactants start in one valley, the products end up in the other. And that peak, that highest point on the path, that's your transition state.
Oh, I see. So it's
Yeah.
like the bottleneck, for the reaction to happen.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Finding that transition state is key to understanding
Right.
how fast a reaction will go, what conditions might make it easier or harder, and even how to control it.
Wow, that's
It's a lot of information packed in there.
really important then.
Yeah, absolutely.
That sounds really difficult to find.
It is.
Yeah.
It has been a bottleneck.
Yeah.
Traditional methods involve simulating the forces between atoms as they
Mhm.
rearrange.
Uh,
And this is incredibly computationally expensive.
I see.
It's like trying to map out every possible route through a dense forest. It can take a lot of time and effort.
And that's where this freezing string method comes in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The freezing string method, or FSM,
Okay.
it provides a shortcut.
Great.
Imagine taking a string, attaching one end to the reactants and the other to the products,
Oh.
and then gradually pulling that string taut
Okay.
until it settles into the lowest energy path across that metaphorical mountain range.
So instead of like checking every single path, you're
Yeah.
like, okay, let's just try and find the lowest energy one, and that will probably be the right one.
Precisely. And that's a huge time saver.
Wow, that's clever.
It is. But the authors of this paper took it a step further.
Okay.
They brought in a powerful tool from the world of machine learning,
Oh, okay.
graph neural networks.
Graph neural networks. Now we're talking.
Now we're getting into it.
This is really cool.
Yeah,
We're diving deep into AI now.
we are.
So graph neural networks,
Or GNNs.
or GNNs.
They excel at understanding relationships. They can learn how things are connected and how those connections influence their behavior.
Okay.
In the case of molecules, those connections are the chemical bonds between atoms.
So it's not just like the atoms are there. It's like
Right.
how they're actually
It's the whole network, the
Yeah.
whole picture.
connected. Yeah.
Exactly. And that's what makes GNNs so powerful for studying molecules.
Right.
They can capture the complexity of these interactions in a way that traditional methods often struggle with.
So in this paper, they trained a GNN to like predict the energy of a molecule
Right.
based on its structure.
Right. They used a two-step process,
Okay.
pre-training and fine-tuning.
Okay.
They started by training the GNN on a massive dataset called ANI-1,
Okay.
which contains millions of molecular structures and their energies.
Wow.
This gave the GNN a broad understanding of the basic principles of
Okay.
how molecular structure relates to energy.
So it's like they gave it chemistry 101.
That's a great way to tell it,
like
right?
the general
The fundamental.
fundamentals. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I imagine that's not enough to really understand these transition states.
You're right.
It needs more than just the general, like,
It needs more specialized training,
specialized training.
and that's where fine-tuning comes in.
Okay.
So they fine-tuned the GNN on a smaller but more specialized dataset
Okay.
called GDB7-20TS.
Okay. So it's like
And this dataset is all about transition states.
it went to chemistry 101 and now it's going to like
It's getting its PhD now.
graduate level
Yeah.
chemistry. Yeah.
Yeah, and this fine-tuning step proved to be crucial
Okay.
for achieving the remarkable accuracy
Okay.
and computational efficiency
Okay.
they report in the paper.
So this idea of like
Yeah.
training on a big data set first and then fine tuning
Yeah.
seems like a really common theme now
It's popping up everywhere.
in machine learning.
It is. It's proving incredibly effective
Yeah.
for tackling these really complex problems,
Right.
like finding transition states
it's a beautiful combination of like
It really is.
chemistry and AI
Yeah.
to get these results.
It's a powerful new tool.
But to really understand
Yeah.
how we got here,
Yeah.
it, it helps to look back a little
A
bit.
little history lesson.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How did we get to this point where machine learning
Yeah.
is playing such a big role in chemistry?
It's a great point. This research didn't emerge in a vacuum.
Yeah.
It builds upon decades of work in both computational chemistry and machine learning.
Right.
In the early days of computing, even simple calculations involving molecules
Oh, yeah.
were incredibly time-consuming.
I bet.
It must have been like
I can only imagine.
trying to stream a movie on dial-up internet.
Oh, that's a good analogy.
Yeah.
Like just waiting forever?
But as computing power increased,
Yeah.
so did the complexity of the systems that chemists could study.
Right.
New algorithms were developed, like the freezing string method,
Yeah.
to make these calculations more efficient.
But even then, those transition states,
Still a bottleneck.
still a bottleneck.
And that's where machine learning,
Okay.
particularly neural networks,
Okay.
started to make a real impact.
Right. We've seen neural networks just explode recently.
Everywhere you look,
Yeah.
image recognition, natural language processing,
Yeah, you name it.
everything.
Yeah, it's everywhere.
And chemists quickly realized the potential of neural networks, specifically a type called neural network potentials, or NNPs,
NNP.
to predict the energy of molecules based on their structure.
So it's like you showed a molecule and it's like,
Here's the energy.
here's the energy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Early NNPs showed promise,
Okay.
but they weren't quite ready to handle the complexities of transition states.
Okay.
They lacked the data and the architectural sophistication
Okay.
to accurately capture those fleeting high-energy states.
So right tool, wrong time, kind of?
Yeah, the idea was there,
Yeah.
but the technology hadn't quite caught up.
Yeah. And this paper is kind of like
This is where it all comes together.
everything coming together?
Yeah, it represents a convergence of several key advancements.
Uh-huh.
The development of more sophisticated GNN architectures,
Yeah.
the creation of specialized datasets
Yeah.
focused on transition states,
Right. Yeah.
and the increasing availability of powerful computing resources.
So we have the computing power now.
We got it all.
We have the data.
We got the algorithms.
We have the algorithms. Okay. So everything's in place.
It's all coming together.
But even with all that, the paper talked about
Yeah.
this ethane dehydrogenation example.
Yeah, ethane case.
And it showed
It showed us
that it's still not
that there's still room for improvement,
perfect. Yeah.
especially when it comes to data quality.
So even if you have a good GNN,
Yeah.
if the data isn't quite there yet,
It can struggle.
yeah,
If it encounters a reaction,
yeah.
that's significantly different from the types of reactions it
Well-
was trained on.
So it needs to be diverse data.
Diverse and comprehensive.
That covers a lot of different
The full range of chemistry.
reactions. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay. So that's an important takeaway.
It is.
So even though we've had these advancements,
Yeah.
data is still really, really important.
Data is king.
Yeah. But even with these challenges,
Yeah.
the results are still,
Results are incredibly promising.
yeah, it sounds really
They suggest that we're on the cusp of a new era in computational chemistry,
yeah,
one where machine learning plays a central role
really cool.
in accelerating discovery.
So in the next part of our deep dive,
Yeah.
we're going to take a little bit closer look at this GNN architecture.
Let's get into the nuts and bolts of
Yeah.
these models.
That sounds good.
I'm excited for that one.
I'm excited to learn more about that.
Yeah, me too.
So until then, thanks for listening to Talk Tensors.
See you next time.
Welcome back to Talk Tensors. Last time we were talking about these graph neural networks and how they're really changing the game when it comes to finding transition states and chemical reactions. I'm really curious to kind of dig into how these GNNs actually work, like what makes them so good at understanding these really complex molecular interactions.
So it really comes down to how GNNs process information. You know, unlike traditional methods that might treat a molecule as just a static collection of atoms, a GNN sees it as a network.
Okay.
With the atoms as nodes and the bonds between them as edges.
Okay.
And it's this ability to like explicitly model those relationships between atoms that makes them so powerful for chemistry.
So instead of just looking at the individual parts, they're looking at like how everything's connected.
Exactly. It's
Yeah.
the whole picture, how it all fits together. And those interactions are constantly evolving, especially during a chemical reaction. You
Right.
know, as bonds break and form, those relationships shift.
Yeah.
And the overall energy of the molecule changes, and GNNs can actually track those changes step by step,
Yeah.
which is really crucial for understanding those transition states.
Okay, that makes sense. But I'm still a little fuzzy on how this actually works in practice.
Sure.
The paper mentioned a specific GNN architecture called Schnet.
Right.
Can you break that down for us? What are the key components there?
So Schnet is a type of message-passing neural network,
Okay.
and it's built on this really elegant idea of allowing atoms to communicate with each other by passing messages along the bonds that connect them.
Okay.
So imagine like a simple water molecule.
Okay.
Schnet would treat the oxygen atom and the two hydrogen atoms as nodes in a graph,
Okay.
connected by edges that represent those chemical bonds.
So each atom's like talking to its neighbors.
Exactly. And along those lines, they can send messages
Okay.
that contain information about their current state, things like their type, their position, and their energy.
Oh, okay.
So let's say the oxygen atom wants to know the energy of the whole molecule.
Okay.
It would start by sending a message to each of its hydrogen neighbors saying, hey, I'm oxygen and my energy is this much.
Oh.
The hydrogen atoms receive those messages, update their own information, and then pass messages along to any other atoms they're connected to.
Oh, wow. So it's like this whole chain reaction.
Yeah, like a chain reaction or a game of telephone.
Spreading through the whole molecule.
Exactly. And this process doesn't just happen once.
Okay.
It repeats multiple times,
Okay.
allowing the network to gradually build up a more complete picture of the molecule and how its energy is distributed.
So each time they kind of refine their understanding of what's going on.
Exactly. They're sharing information and coming to a consensus about the overall energy of the molecule.
Oh, that's cool. And so this can actually capture these like really subtle interactions between atoms.
Yes, exactly. Even if those atoms are several bonds away.
Wow.
Schnet can account for these long-range effects,
Okay.
which is crucial for accurately modeling those chemical reactions.
That's impressive.
Okay.
It seems like a lot more detail than some of those traditional methods.
It is, but even with the sophisticated architecture, the quality of the training data is still paramount.
Right. Because you were talking about how important the data is.
Absolutely. A GNN is only as good as the data it's trained on.
Yeah.
And the authors of this paper, they really went to great lengths to ensure their GNN had the right education, so to speak.
Yeah.
Remember those two data sets we mentioned, ANI-1 and GDB7-20TS?
Right. ANI-1 was like the big general one, and then
General and
GDB7 was the more specific one
specialized one.
for the transition state.
Exactly. So ANI-1, it's like this massive textbook
Wow.
containing millions of molecular structures and their corresponding energies.
Okay.
It covers a wide range of molecules and bonding arrangements.
Yeah.
So it gives the GNN this solid foundation in how molecular structure relates to energy.
Okay. So like the general rules of chemistry.
Yeah.
But to really get into those transition states, it needs more than just the general rules.
It needs specialized training,
Yeah.
and that's where GDB7-20TS comes in.
Okay.
This data set's much smaller than ANI-1, but it's carefully curated to include a variety of those transition state structures and their energies.
So it's like it's going from chemistry 101 to like
Graduate level now.
graduate seminar. Yeah.
Exactly. And this focused training allows the GNN to really fine-tune its understanding of those subtle energy changes
Okay.
that occur as molecules move through those critical transition states.
And the paper showed that that fine tuning was really important,
It was.
especially for that ethane dehydrogenation.
Particularly for ethane.
Yeah.
The fine-tuned GNN was able to accurately predict the transition state for ethane dehydrogenation, even though that reaction was significantly different from the ones it had seen during pre-training.
Oh, wow.
So this highlights the importance of having those specialized data sets that capture the full diversity of chemical reactions we want to study.
So it's not just about having data. It's about having the right data.
The right kind of data.
Yeah.
And it's a reminder that in machine learning, data is king.
Data is king.
But even with the best data, there are still challenges. You know, the paper emphasized that careful selection of that training data is crucial
Yeah.
for avoiding bias and ensuring that the GNN generalizes well to new reactions.
Right. Because we don't want it to just memorize the things it's seen.
Exactly.
We want it to actually understand
We want it to learn the underlying principles.
the principles.
Yeah, that govern all chemical reactions so we can accurately predict the behavior of molecules it's never encountered before.
So it's about like finding that balance between being really specialized, but also general.
That sweet spot between specialization and generalization.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this is an ongoing area of research in machine learning for chemistry.
Right. I can imagine a lot of people working on this now.
A lot of folks were really excited about it.
Yeah.
So developing those robust and reliable GNNs for chemistry requires careful consideration of both the architecture of the model and the quality and diversity of that training data.
This whole process of pre-training on this huge data set and then
Yeah,
fine-tuning is really powerful.
it is.
I wonder if it could be used for like other areas of science beyond chemistry.
That's a great question, and it's one that researchers are actively exploring, this idea of transfer learning,
Okay.
where you take a model that's trained on one task and adapt it to another task is becoming really popular in machine learning.
It's almost like they're learning,
Transferable skills
yeah, transferable skills.
that they can apply to new problems.
That's really cool.
And we're seeing this in fields like materials science, drug discovery, and even climate modeling. It's
Wow.
really exciting.
Yeah, it's really exciting to think about where this could go, but
Yeah.
let's bring it back to the paper for now.
Right.
Um, we've talked a lot about these GNN architectures and trading processes,
Yeah.
but I'm kind of curious to hear your thoughts on the broader implications of this research. Like, what does this actually mean for the future of chemistry and beyond?
That's a great question, and that's what we'll explore in the final part of our deep dive. We're going to delve into those potential applications of this GNN-powered freezing string method,
Okay.
from accelerating drug discovery to designing those new materials we were talking about.
I'm really excited to hear about that.
Me too. It's going to be good.
Welcome back to Talk Tensors. So we've spent the last two parts of our deep dive really digging into this paper, combining the freezing string method with these graph neural networks to find these transition states in chemical reactions. And I think we have a really good understanding now of how this all works. But now I want to talk about the so what? Like, what does this actually mean for the future? Where could this technology take us?
It's a great question, and the potential applications are incredibly exciting, especially in areas like drug discovery and material science. Imagine being a pharmaceutical researcher. You're trying to develop a new drug. One of the first steps is finding a molecule that binds tightly to a specific protein involved in a disease.
It's like finding the right key for a really complex lock.
Exactly. And traditionally, this drug discovery process has involved a lot of trial and error testing, countless molecules to see which ones bind effectively.
And that takes a long time.
It's incredibly time-consuming and expensive.
So this new approach with GNNs you could basically simulate those interactions like way faster.
Yeah, you could use the GNN to predict that energy landscape of the drug-protein interaction, and you could screen thousands, even millions of potential drug candidates
Wow.
to find the ones most likely to be effective.
So it's like having a search engine for new drugs.
That's a great way to think about it.
That's really cool.
And it could really speed up that drug development process, leading to faster cures and treatments for diseases.
That's amazing. And it's not just about finding new drugs, right?
Yeah.
It could also help us understand how the drugs we already have actually work.
Right, at that molecular level, which could lead to better dosing strategies and fewer side effects.
It's like personalized medicine, tailoring the treatment to each individual patient.
Absolutely, but the applications go way beyond just medicine. Think about materials science. Imagine being able to design materials with very specific properties like strength, flexibility, conductivity, or even self-healing abilities.
This sounds like science fiction.
It does sound futuristic, but with these GNNs and the FSM, it could become a reality. Researchers could simulate how different molecular building blocks combine and interact to create those new materials.
So you could basically build materials from scratch with exactly the properties that you want.
Precisely tailor-made materials for specific applications.
Wow. And that could change so many industries.
From aerospace and electronics to construction and energy production, we could see lighter, stronger, more efficient materials for airplanes, batteries, solar panels, you name it.
It's really incredible to think about all the possibilities.
And we've only just scratched the surface of what might be possible.
It feels like we're on the verge of like a whole new era of understanding and manipulating matter at this tiny level.
We are, but as with any powerful technology, it's important to be mindful of the limitations and potential challenges.
Right. We've talked about the importance of data.
The need for high-quality, diverse datasets to train these GNNs is paramount. The success of this approach really depends on having data that accurately reflects the full complexity of those chemical reactions.
So it needs to be like a real collaborative effort.
Absolutely, to build those comprehensive data sets. And as these models become more and more complex, it also becomes more important to understand how they're making their predictions.
Right. We can't just trust them blindly.
We need to be able to interpret their decisions, and that requires developing new methods to visualize and interpret the inner workings of these models.
So making sure they're not just black boxes.
Exactly. We want to make their reasoning transparent and accessible.
That makes a lot of sense. So it seems like overall this research is a big step forward.
It's a significant leap forward in our ability to study and control chemical reactions
And it really shows the power of combining machine learning.
with these fundamental principles of chemistry.
Yeah, a true convergence of two powerful fields.
And the possibilities are truly endless. It's an exciting time to be working in this area.
It's been amazing exploring this paper with you today. I think our listeners have a much better understanding now of how machine learning is really transforming scientific discovery.
Me too. And I can't wait to see what the future holds for this field.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the world of graph neural networks.